Kel Tec RDB versus IWI Tavor.
Welcome back to the Spent Brass channel. Pistol Pete here, bringing you another versus video. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Kel Tec RDB and seeing if it's a worthy opponent to the king of the bullpups, the IWI Tavor. So before we start, there's a couple of things that kind of points that we need to put out there just to put this video and this review in perspective. First off, if you're looking for just a short video where somebody blows 100 rounds through the RDB and gives it a thumbs up, you're probably in the wrong place. We've got a lot of experience to share on both the RDB and the Tavor in this video, and we're probably going to go into a decent amount of detail. We've got a lot of cool footage to roll out for you guys of shooting both rifles. So if you're looking for a short video, this is not the place. Probably shut things down now. Also, that being said, because there's already so many videos out there and so many reviews on the Tavor, it's already kind of accepted as the king of the bullpups. We're going to be taking a slightly different approach to this video. We're going to be looking at this as kind of a review of the Kel Tec RDB, the newcomer, the challenger, and comparing it to the Tavor along the way, when and if is appropriate. So who is this versus video geared towards? Seems like an obvious answer, but the devil is in the details. It's geared towards recreational shooters who are interested in bullpups, who are maybe interested in adding an RDB or a Tavor to their collection, but want some data points to help drive to the decision between the two. Also geared towards Tavor owners, because there's a lot of Tavor owners out there who have kind of taken to the bullpup platform and are considering, you know, maybe adding an RDB to their collection, and again, want some data points that can help drive a more informed decision. What's even more important is probably who this video is not geared towards. And who it's not geared towards are actual operators, or guys who would be choosing between these two rifles as to which one they have to carry into combat. Now you're probably thinking, Pistol Pete, obviously, you know, real operators aren't watching some jabroni's YouTube channel to help guide their decision on which rifle to carry into combat. Well, that's exactly my point. The reason that I bring that up is because while on paper these look like very similar rifles, they both have a 1/2 x 28 thread pitch, they're both bullpups, they both are piston driven, they feed from AR mags, they shoot 223 5.56, you know, the dimensions are similar. Well, they're actually very different when it comes to the core of kind of what they are. The Kel Tec RDB is a commercially available rifle to civilians, where in comparison the IWI Tavor is a semi-automatic version of an actual military rifle that, you know, has a proven track record in combat. And because of that, there's one thing that all the shooters in our group unanimously agreed on, and that's if they were going into a combat situation and they had to choose between these two rifles, they would pick up the Tavor because of that military track record. So that being said, Pistol Pete, why even bother doing the comparison video? Well, luckily enough, none of the guys in our group are going into combat, but we do enjoy firearms. And both of these firearms are very well suited for a variety of purposes. So everything from home defense, personal defense, having a truck gun, running guns like we do, target shooting. If you want to go out and hunting with either one of these rifles, you could certainly use them. Or they're both just really cool rifles, and I'm sure there's plenty of guys out there who buy both of these just to collect. So really, that's why we're kind of comparing the two. So to give a little background as to what really prompted this review and this video, it started about 3 years ago, over 3 years ago now, when the Beard bought his B16 FDE Tavor. He actually bought it in, we had to go back and check receipts. He purchased it in March, late March of 2014 for about a little over 2,000 bucks. It was like $2,060. So he got like a very early one. And I picked mine up, you know, after I shot his, I knew I had to have one. I picked mine up about 3 months later for about $1,800 out the door, and mine is a B18 with an 18-inch barrel, also an FDE. So we've been putting rounds through Tavors for over 3 years, and in fact, the first time we shot his Tavor was one of the first times we started kind of doing run and guns and like using vehicles as cover and things like that, and actually just having a lot of fun with it. So we kind of trace our roots back to shooting Tavors together. So we've got a lot of experience shooting them. And to be fair, we probably use these a little bit more aggressively than most Tavor owners do. You know, while we have shot them off the bench at 100, 200, 300, 500 yards, most of the rounds that we've put through both of our Tavors have been at run and gun events out in the desert, getting dusty, putting a lot of rounds through in a short period of time, running a lot of steel case. So our sample size of 2 has really kind of, you know, we've got a lot of trigger time on it. When I first bought my Tavor 3 years ago, the first time I brought it to the range, it would not function and cycle correctly. So I had to actually send it back to IWI, and they repaired it. I believe the operating rod was bent, and it created some issues that wouldn't allow it to function, but now it functions fine, runs steel case pretty reliably, and you know, I haven't really had any real troubles with it since. It's also worth mentioning that I've owned a couple Kel Tec products in the past too. I'm not going to go into details, but didn't have luck with either one of them, and I pretty much had written off Kel Tec indefinitely. And I was that guy when one of the guys in our group would say, hey Pistol Pete, check out this KSG or whatever it was. I'd say, hey man, probably steer clear of that. I've had bad luck with those guys in the past. Well, what got me interested in the RDB was I saw it come up and it was available for $900 at Classic Firearms. And that kind of raised my eyebrows enough for where I was like, you know what, that's half of what I paid for my Tavor. And in paper, it looks pretty good. So I started looking into it. I kind of rewatched some of the videos. And by the time I had kind of sold myself on purchasing it, I went back to Classic and it was already out of stock. So at that point I said, you know what, if it comes up again somewhere else, you know, if I get a good price on it, I'll pull the trigger on it. One of the things about the Kel Tec is that it really hasn't been available all too often. You don't see them in stock everywhere at the big gun dealers, at least not right now at this kind of, you know, point in time. But you know, $900 was attractive to me, and it's one of the reasons why you know, I ended up pulling the trigger on it. I figured it was a pretty low risk investment. If I didn't like it, I could always turn around and sell it and not lose any money. So that's kind of what prompted this whole thing. And honestly, I didn't really expect it to get this far, but it has, and I think you'll be interested in finding out why. All right, so let's get into it. Out of the box, I was actually pretty happy with the Kel Tec. The plastic felt good, the gun felt good in the hand, there wasn't any rattles or squeaks or anything like that. Felt pretty solid, with one exception, and that's that the forend of the gun had a little bit of fore and aft play. In this day and age, you'd think with manufacturing and stuff that you could do a little bit better than that, but the forend is something we're actually going to talk about on the RDB later in the video. Now, in comparison to the Tavor, my Tavor actually has a little bit of play in the front handguard, and it also has a little bit of play in the 45-degree offset rail. So even though the plastic might feel a little bit tougher on the Tavor, I'm going to say it's pretty much a wash. You know, they both had a little bit of flash on the plastic here and there at the seams and stuff like that. So fit and finish, I'd have to say, was pretty close between the two. So one difference between these two rifles is that the RDB doesn't come with any sights. It does come with just a top rail. Top rail is probably around 10 inches long or something like that, and it's functional. In comparison, the Tavor does come with backup sights. They're tritium. They work relatively well. You know, obviously either one of these rifles is going to do a lot better with an Optic, but it's just one of those little things, you know, to kind of level the playing field, you would have to add backup sights to the RDB. So obviously to get the most out of either one of these rifles, you're going to want to run an Optic. In this case, I chose a Holosun HS515CU, which is my favorite optic on this type of rifle. Super fast up close, very compact, very lightweight, super durable, awesome optic, great fit for the RDB. On the Tavor, I'm running a Primary Arms 2.5x fixed power ACSS reticle. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, but you do have that drop reticle and you do have a little bit more magnification for reaching out with. So as configured, minus the Atlas bipod, which is just on here for kind of display, the Kel Tec RDB comes in at 7.5 pounds with Holosun. The Holosun weighs about 1/3 of a pound, which puts a naked Kel Tec RDB at about 7.2 pounds. That's pretty good, you know, that's really good, and it feels good. It feels light in the hand, it's easy to handle. In comparison, this 18-inch Tavor with the Optic is something like 9.4 pounds, which feels a lot heavier. The Optic does weigh really almost a full pound, so it's really closer to 8.4 pounds naked, which is still over a pound heavier than the Kel Tec. And you're probably saying, well, Pistol Pete, you're comparing an 18-inch barrel Tavor to the Kel Tec. Well, if you think about it, the Kel Tec actually has a 17.5-inch barrel. So the 18-inch barrel Tavor is probably a better comparison, or at least closer in terms of barrel length to the RDB. So keep that in mind as we go through. From a length perspective, I think the Tavor is about 29 inches for the B18, and the B16 is like an inch and a half shorter. I think the B16 is almost the exact same length, or very close to the RDB, which is about 27.5 inches. Excellent compact package. You're getting all the benefits of an SBR, but you're getting less muzzle flash, more velocity. So, you know, not trying to sell you on a bullpup versus an SBR, AR, or something like that, but there's a lot of benefits. When it comes to just field stripping these two rifles, they're both super easy. They both have pins, captured pins, but I'm gonna have to give overall takedown and cleaning ease to the Kel Tec. The Kel Tec allows you to get a lot deeper up into the gun's guts. It gives you a lot easier access to the chamber and the barrel, and basically makes it easier to get the chamber clean and the guts clean. The Tavor, you pop the back open, you pull the bolt and carrier out, and to get in there, you kind of have to like fit a rag in there, and it's kind of tougher to get to the chamber. You can still do it with an extension, but it's just not quite as easy. So that's a minor, you know, kind of +1 for the Kel Tec. When you get into the guts of the two rifles, you start to see some major philosophical differences. The Kel Tec has a smaller bolt carrier group that almost looks like a shrunken AK bolt carrier group with an AR-ish rotating bolt that travels really far in the receiver. Basically what happens is when the bolt unlocks, it comes all the way out, goes all the way over the magazine, and then all the way to the rear of the gun so that it can spit a round out down through the downward ejector port, which means it travels really far, and over that path of travel, it's fighting spring pressure that whole time. In comparison, the Tavor has a much heavier, but much nicer looking and much nicer machined bolt carrier group that does not cycle as far. The RDB does have an adjustable gas system, which I love as a feature on a gun. It's something that the Tavor does not have. The reason I like the adjustable gas system is because you can tune your gun to run whatever ammo you're running, or for suppressed use, you have a lot more flexibility with it. The Kel Tec's adjustable gas is different than like a Bren or a Scar, where it doesn't have modes. It has actual tunability with a bunch of different clicks. I haven't counted the clicks, but it's probably like 15 or 20 clicks from open to close. And what you do to tune the system properly is start like 3 or 4 clicks opened out from closed, and then start putting one round in a magazine at a time, firing it through the gun, and opening it a click at a time until the bolt carrier group holds open on an empty magazine. That's how you tune it. You can tune it for the type of ammo you're going to run it in the gun, or you can do what I did, which is run the softest ammo you have, which was I think 62 grain Wolf steel case, get it to lock back on that, and then for me it ran everything else reliably. So between the adjustable gas and the lighter bolt carrier group that travels farther under spring pressure, the Kel Tec RDB has a very soft recoil impulse. I was actually really surprised with how smooth and nicely the gun shot. In comparison, the Tavor definitely has a little bit more recoil, and that's something to consider if you are recoil sensitive. The Kel Tec can be tuned down so that it's a real pussycat to shoot, and I'm not the only one in the group who noticed that. I think the consensus was generally that the Kel Tec was a smoother shooting firearm. So another thing, while these guns are really similar on paper, is very different in practice is the ergonomics of the two. There are some similarities. They both have forward charging handles, but those are different. The Tavor has a fixed out lever that has kind of a short throw, and the Kel Tec has the charging handle is under spring tension that closes it, and you can open the charging handle and flip it up kind of like an HK or something like that, and then slap it closed to cycle the bolt. So kind of a cool thing and a little bit different. They both have paddle style mag releases, which I actually am kind of a big fan of because you can run them pretty fast. but even those are different. You know, the Kel Tec's is metal and it's kind of like a one-piece spring, whereas the Tavor's is plastic and it's kind of on a lever. They both function just fine. So you've probably heard people talk about the Tavor being rear heavy. That's true even on the 18-inch model. And what's different about the Kel Tec is it's a little bit better balanced, and the pistol grip is actually closer to the center of the gun. So the RDB actually handles a little bit better in that sense. Another thing that aids to the RDB's handling is that the forearm is much longer. So you can actually get your support hand much farther out on the firearm, and I think it actually gives you better control. So those are a couple areas where the RDB actually has a leg up on the Tavor in terms of handling. The Kel Tec also has an ambi safety, which is, you know, maybe not quite as perfect of an angle as an AR-15, but it's still totally usable. The Tavor's is only on one side. It might be reversible, I don't know. If you're a lefty, out of the box, the RDB is probably going to be an easier gun for you to shoot. Now, I know that the Tavor can be switched over to a left-handed configuration, but what if you have a kid that you want to shoot and he's right-handed? You know, all of a sudden you got the shell ejecting in his face and stuff like that. I kind of like the downward ejection for that, because when we were passing around, we have a lefty in our shooting group, and he kind of liked that a lot, about how, you know, how much easier it was to adapt to the RDB and not have to like send it out to get some kind of conversion done. You can switch the charging handle back and forth really easily, so that's kind of a nice little pro. The pistol grips are both, you know, definitely very different, but also both plenty ergonomic. If you don't like the scabbard style trigger guard that the Tavor has, you might want to look more at like an X95. A couple other little ergonomic things. The RDB has a rail along the bottom of the forend, so you can mount a flashlight or a vertical foregrip or a bipod, which is kind of nice. The Tavor doesn't have that. There are things that you can add, but then it kind of gets awkward with the grip. If you want to add a bipod, you kind of have to add it at the bottom of the pistol grip. Those things are not true for the X95, which has a forward rail, but Tavor specific, that's another area that the Kel Tec kind of has a leg up. The Tavor does have a 45-degree offset rail, which is kind of cool for flashlights and stuff like that. At the end of the day, they both have really good ergonomics, I think. But for me, I'm going to make kind of a bold statement and say that I actually prefer the ergonomics of the RDB. And the reason I say that is I have a little bit more real estate out front with my support hand with the RDB. I have a lot more choices with the RDB as to how far or close I want to keep that support hand. I actually like the ergonomics of the pistol grip a little bit better on the RDB. That gator grip or whatever they call it does give you a secure fit with gloves or without. So I like that, and the balance of it. The gun comes up on target, I think, faster than the Tavor, and it's easier to move with. So for running guns, I really do kind of prefer the ergonomics of the RDB. Now, while shooting either one of these guns in a remove and shoot scenario is great, that's kind of what they're designed for and what they're at home at, neither one of these guns is a lot of fun to shoot off of the bench or prone. And there's some reasons for that. With the Tavor, you really, to run a bipod on it, you have to put that bottom rail, and you have to use like either a huge bipod, or you'd have to run that goofy looking bipod that mounts to the bottom of the pistol grip. Not really into that. So we shot it off bags most of the time. I think we've mostly shot the Tavor off bags when we're shooting off the bench. And that's fine. The ejection out to the side is fine. It's kind of a tall gun, so you do kind of have to prop it up high when you're on the bench. Definitely not really designed for bench shooting. The same could be said about the RDB. The RDB does have a bottom rail, so you can run a bipod, but there's some things about that we figured out that aren't ideal, and we'll talk about that more when we get into accuracy and long-range shooting. But aside from that, the rear of the gun is kind of hard to support. You know, you've got the magazine, and then directly behind it you've got the ejection port, and what we ended up doing was putting a bag under the ejection port so that we would have to kind of like pop the gun up and knock some of the spent cases away every time, or else the gun would start to jam on its own spent cases. We had to do that, but I felt like it was probably the best way to support it off the bench. Honestly, guys, if you're looking for a gun to shoot off the bench, I wouldn't recommend either one of these rifles. They're not really meant for that. There's a ton of better options to do that. These guns are made for like move and shoot situations, and that's really where they're at home. When it comes to triggers, It's true. The Kel Tec RDB has one of the best bullpup triggers out there. It's the way I would describe it is it has a little bit of take up, a solid wall, a pretty clean brake at about a little under 5 pounds, and a little bit over travel. It's not bad. And then the reset is about 2/3 of the way out. The reset is audible. It's not very tactile. Overall, a really good, totally fine trigger. I'm very satisfied with it out of the box. I'm not going to make any changes to it. In comparison to the Tavor, the RDB beats up on the Tavor in the trigger department. It also beats up on the X95. In my Tavor, I'm running a Geisley lightning bow trigger blade with a factory trigger pack with a second spring removed, the extra return spring. And I found that to be a pretty good value setup on the Tavor. I have run other trigger packs in my Tavor, but I'm not running them anymore, and I won't get into the details, but you know, do that at your own risk, guys. Basically, I have $100 into the trigger upgrade on the Tavor, and I still don't like it as much as the RDB's factory trigger. I've got the Geisley tuned up, the lightning bow tuned up as best as I can. And the way I would describe it, it's a single stage trigger compared to the dual stage trigger on the RDB. Basically, you've got an immediate wall. The wall's right there. A little bit of creep and a brake at about, let's say about 5.5 pounds. Very little over travel and a full reset with very little throw to the trigger, because to get it the way I have it, you kind of had to like adjust this to take up a lot of the slack out of the trigger group. It works. It's better than the factory setup, but it costs an extra $100, and you've got to take that into consideration when you're looking at the value equation between these guns, which we will do today before we wrap up. All right, so let's start talking about accuracy. I'd heard a lot of things about the RDB, that it wasn't very accurate. I heard that, there was different barrel twist weights. This one came with a 1-in-7 twist. I think some of the pre-production ones had 1-in-9 twists. So, I wasn't really trusting the results that I'd seen out there on the interwebs. So the Beard and I decided to kind of do our own. And the results I'm about to share with you are honestly not very impressive. They're acceptable, I think, given the circumstances of kind of the purpose of the gun. And we'll talk about the practical accuracy of this gun and when we're done looking at targets. But I'm going to walk you guys through the targets, and as I do it, I'm going to point something out on almost every target that started to become kind of a concern. And we didn't realize it while we were shooting targets, but we started to realize that this was an issue later when shooting long range. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll flash up a picture of the first target we shot. It was with Wolf Gold 55 grain full metal jacket. This is like a benchmark for us. We shoot a lot of Wolf Gold 55 grain because it's really good ammo that's available really cheap, and it's brass case. We're not really champagne and caviar kind of guys. When we're out doing running guns, we're running steel case, whatever's cheap. When we're feeling ritzy, we run the Wolf Gold 55 grain. It's really excellent ammo for the money. I think most reasonable guns can squeeze 2 MOA out of Wolf Gold 55 grain or better. And our results with Wolf Gold 55 grain weren't that fantastic. I had a 3.6 inch group, which is starting to get towards terrible at 100 yards. And let me just take a step back and explain how we shot these groups. I would shoot 5 shots with the ammo at 100 yards, and then the Beard would come in and shoot 5 shots with the ammo at 100 yards at the same target. So our groups were on the same target. We did keep track of which hits were whose, and we spotted and did what we could there to really, we were hoping to take an average and see if one of us was shooting it better or not. One thing we realized is that for every single group, the Beard was shooting had a lower POI than I did. So the averages weren't based off the total spread of the two groups. They were based off the total spread of the two groups individually. And I'll kind of walk you through that. So like I said, my first group with the Wolf Gold was 3.6 inches. It was 2.25 inches if you threw out my really horrible flyer. The Beard's was 3.1 inches. The average of the two groups was 3.35, and the average without the one flyer was 2.675. Now, when you're looking at this target, you're thinking, man, you guys suck. Well, we really don't suck. We both are decent shooters, and we were kind of confused when we were getting these results. And when you look at this target, the one thing that should jump out at you is that aside from that flyer to the right, the major amount of kind of spread of this group is vertical. The vast majority of it. It's probably like an inch wide horizontally, but the spread is probably like 4 or 5 inches up and down, which at the time we were just banging out groups and we didn't really think much about it. We were like, oh man, you know, it just is what it is. But we'll talk about that later. So that's Wolf 55 grain. Next up, we tested like 6 different kind of ammo, and I'll walk you guys through them all. These minutes maybe a little bit quicker. This is Wolf Gold Match, 75 grain hollow point boat tail. I shot 2.5 inches. The Beard shot over 3 inches. He had 2 that were way low off paper because of his POI change. But you know, again, not terrific groups, especially considering Wolf Match 75 grain is fairly decent ammo. It's, you know, I've shot, you know, close to MOA with this stuff before for sure through other rifles. So again, we were kind of like, I don't know. Group 3 was with SSA 63 grain 5.56. I really like this ammo. I had high hopes for it. I shot a 2.5 inch group, which was kind of meh. The Beard shot a 3.5 inch group, but he had a wild flyer, and if you threw out that flyer, it was a 2.1 inch group. So that was a 3 inch size average group between the two of us, with a 2.3 inch average group if you threw out the flyer. Again, when you're looking at this, the vast majority of spread of the group is vertical. The vast majority of the spread of the group is vertical. Horizontally, it's like an inch wide. So again, we didn't really think about it much on the time, but you know, we were like, okay, you know, it is what it is. So moving along, we shot, gosh, probably my favorite budget match ammo, because sometimes I get this stuff for 10 or 11 bucks for a box of 20. It's PPU 75 grain hollow point boat tail match. This actually was the best group of the day. I shot a 1.7 inch group. The Beard shot a 3.6 inch group, which is not good, but he had 2 crazy flyers, and when you look at the 2 flyers, one was really high and one was really low. Our average between the two of us was 2.65 inches. If you threw out the 2 flyers, it would be a pretty decent group. So again, you know, kind of scratching our head saying, man, why is this thing spitting out flyers? Group number 5 is another ammo that I really like. It's for, especially for like a long range 223 rig. It's IMI Razor Core 77 grain hollow point boat tail match. I shot a 3 inch group with this stuff, which is pretty terrible. You know, again, the Beard shot a 2.5 inch group, but again, look at this target. It's all vertical stringing. Our average for this was 2.75 inches, nothing to write home about. And finally, the ammo that for me showed the most promise was the 69 grain Federal Gold Medal Match hollow point boat tail. And the 4-shot group I shot was about an inch. I had a flyer that opened the group up to like 3.6 inches, and it was almost exactly in line with one of my other shots, but 1, 2, 3.5 inches low or something like that. So again, total head scratcher. The Beard shot his best group with this stuff, which was I think just under 2 inches or around 2 inches. It was a 2.8 inch average between the two of us, and a 1.5 inch average if you throw out the flyer. So you guys are probably thinking you guys suck at shooting groups, and I'll tell you, we're not the best, but we're definitely not the worst. You know, both of us have precision rigs. We both know how to shoot groups. What started to kind of tell the tale of what was going on here was when we took this gun out and we shot it at 500 yards for fun. Now I should mention that when we shot these groups, we weren't using a red dot. We were using a Vortex Viper HSLR 2.5 to 10 power scope and an Aero Precision mount. Really nice rig, awesome glass, love that scope. Still, you know, that's, the groups were what they were. When we went out to 500 yards, I actually had put the Holosun red dot back on the gun, and something that the Beard and I like to do. It's a lot of fun to shoot, you know, this kind of rifle at 500 yards with a red dot just to see what you could do. And we were at Phoenix Rod and Gun Club. Things were going really well, and if you guys want more detail on kind of what we did with this, we did release a separate video that goes through the detail of our it's like all the 500-yard shooting footage that we did. It's on the channel, go check it out. But in a nutshell, we got there, sat down, within 2 shots we were hitting the gong, and I had 3 hits in a row. And we were like, okay, great, you know, this is going really well. Well, what happened was I started stringing shots all over the place, and I couldn't figure out why. And I started to realize that some of the shots were actually hitting at or above the center dot at 500 yards. And I started to kind of scratch my head. What we figured out was we had the bipod on the fore end of the RDB, and you know, when you start putting pressure on it, the fore end is actually mounted to the barrel on the RDB. It's a pencil barrel, so it's not super thick, and pressure on the fore end can start throwing off you know, your point of impact versus your point of aim. And it was a head scratcher for us at first, but once we figured it out, we started to make adjustments, and we started hitting with the thing really well at 500 yards.
Okay, pulling it back into me, favoring the right hand side, on target.
Hit. 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 Hit.
Boom!
Okay, that was really impressive.
So I got anchored in. So here's what I did on this one. I did the opposite of everything that I've ever been taught. I yanked this thing into me.
Yep.
And then I sat my face on top of it.
Yep. To push it down.
Yep. And I had to keep my hand behind, right in front of the ejection port.
Yep.
Luckily I'm wearing gloves. And so my recoil impulse kept me right on it. Still shooting 2 left, 75 grain.
4 shots.
4 shots. Wind is coming a little from right to left now. Maybe 2 miles an hour. On target. Hit. Hit. Barely caught the right edge. High, but hit. There it is. Hit. Good left to right, little low.
So that's...
It's 4 for 4.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because I think if we went back and shot groups again, and we put the bipod all the way towards the rear of the rail, or we used a different bag setup, I think that we probably could have eliminated the majority of that vertical stringing that we shot off bags off the bipod, and tighten those groups up. I'll be honest with you guys, shooting groups is not what I like to do. It's kind of boring for me, so you know, it doesn't excite me. I'm not going to go back out and test that. Maybe someday I will, and I'll post up results. But in the meantime, I think that the results of our testing show that the gun, the actual barrel has pretty good accuracy. The configuration of the gun does not lend itself to bench accuracy. You can get better accuracy out of it, I'm absolutely confident, but you need to make sure that you're holding the gun right, that you're not putting pressure on the front of the fore end and forcing the barrel to bend up. So if you guys, it's an area we'd like to hear back from you on. If you're getting better groups from your RDB, post it up. Again, I don't think it, you know, really what our results were indicative of what the gun is capable of, but it's just what we got. We figured out why we're not going to go back and test it. And the reason why is the kind of the third part of accuracy is practical accuracy out on the run and gun course. We had 0 issues with accuracy from the RDB. On the move, the gun was accurate. You know, it's not that same kind of scenario where you're loading up a bipod, the thing's just floating, kind of doing its job, what it's designed to do. And under those circumstances, it's very accurate to the point where, you know, the final shot on our run and gun course is about 115 yards after running 150 plus yards. So your heart's up, you're breathing, you're sweating, you get to this final shot, and you know, a lot of us hit the final shot in 1 shot with the RDB. The fore end being mounted to the barrel, probably not the best equation for accuracy, but it does create an opportunity for some enterprising companies out there who are willing to adopt the RDB and maybe build some kind of free-floated forend for it. I've already been in touch with a guy who is prototyping one. He said that he'll send it to me for testing. I hope he does, because I would love to test it. I think a free-floated forend would be a huge win for this thing. I think the Kel Tec should also consider doing that and maybe changing the design a little bit, because there's a lot of people out there who do shoot from a bench, and if it's not accurate off of a bench, that they're going to lose interest in the gun, and I think that could hinder the RDB success. So we talked about accuracy. Let's talk about reliability. This is kind of a funny story. We put a lot of rounds through the RDB. We put a variety of different types of rounds through the RDB. We put it through a couple different, a few different situations. We used a ton of different mags in the RDB. Overall, I'm going to give the RDB a thumbs up on reliability. But the road to get there was a little bit rocky, or I should say there was a couple speed bumps in the road. And the first problem we had was about 200 or 300 rounds into our day out with this thing in the desert at a running gun. Alpha Cat was doing his run, and he got a stuck case in the RDB. And a couple things we learned. So first off, stuck cases in the RDB can be kind of tough. That downward ejection, while it's kind of cool, it's also a bit of a hindrance, because it's tough to see a stuck case in there. It's tough to inspect the chamber. You have to flip the gun upside down. So cool in some ways, not so cool in others. But we did get a stuck case, and I think it was with brass cased ammo the first time. So we take it back, we look at it. As soon as we got the stuck case, everybody in the group is ready to write off the Kel Tec. People are saying Kel Tec junk and all this stuff.
Hey, Kel Tec sucks, everybody.
KelTecSucks.com.
Yeah, check out our website, KelTecSucks.com. You can donate to our other website, KelTecSucks.org.
I wasn't ready to write it off right away. So we took it apart, we knocked the case out, we took a look at the case, we took a look at the chamber. It didn't slap me right in the face at first what was going on. Well, I took the gun back out, and 2 or 3 rounds in, it jammed again with a stuck case in the chamber. Fired the round, case stuck in the chamber. In fact, in this case, I think the extractor actually ripped the rim off the case, and it was a steel case. It was like Wolf 55 grain. So we bring it back into, under one of the tents in the shade, and we start taking a good look at the thing. And luckily enough, X-Ring, one of our shooters, had a cleaning kit with him, and we were able to kind of clean the thing. And what I realized was happening is something that I'll share with you guys, and that's that we were running lacquer-cased ammo, Brown Bear 55 grain full metal jacket through the gun, mixed in with a variety of other ammos, including steel and brass. And what was happening was the RDB, there's very few metal parts on the RDB. When you think about like an AR or an AK, both of their receivers are made out of metal, and they can act as heat sinks. So there's places for heat to go from the chamber and spread out to other parts of the gun. With the RDB, it's a little different. The chamber, the barrel, the piston, there's not a lot going on there. Even the barrel is pretty light. So the heat all tends to stay in one place. And it's all encompassed in like, a polymer shell. So what was happening was the lacquer was getting so hot, and it was like sticking into the chamber. And then even when we were running other rounds like steel and brass, the lacquer was jamming them up. And we realized it when we were looking at the spent casings that got stuck in the chamber, because the lacquer actually ended up sticking on to those casings. So after we cleaned the chamber, the gun ran perfect for the rest of the day, no more stuck casings, and we figured it out. And honestly, I fired it a couple of times, had it out a couple of times since, and it's been perfect. But I would just say, word of warning, don't run lacquer through this gun. If you're going to really pound on it and get it hot, lacquer will get stuck in the chamber, and you're going to have to clean it before it's reliable. Aside from that, the Kel Tec RDB has been pretty darn reliable for us. We ran probably a dozen types of magazine through the RDB, including I think 3 or 4 types of GI mags, couple different generations, Gen 2, Gen 3 P mags. We ran Lancers through it, Tango Downs through it, Troy mags through it, Daniel Defense mags through it, and more. I mean, there's a 40 round Gen 3P maglers. We ran a bunch of mags through it. None of them had any problems. Every one of them functioned perfectly. So that was kind of nice. One thing about reliability I will mention is that the top rail on the Kel Tec is actually held on with some set screws. And from the factory, I don't know if they used like blue Loctite or what, but my rail, the screws that held my rail on started to loosen up. I took them out, I cleaned them, got all the oil out, got all the locking compound or whatever was on there out. I used red Loctite, torqued them back down, haven't had a problem since. So there's a couple things to keep an eye out for with the Kel Tec. In terms of reliability, say comparing it to the Tavor, well, my Tavor actually came out of the box broken, so I might be a little bit jaded there. But what's funny is I've seen the Beard's Tavor jam a couple times, and we were going to shoot some footage of him and I shooting the Tavor and the RDB next to each other, and his Tavor jammed. And it was the funniest thing. We were all just laughing. It was almost like the Kel Tec came back from the ashes from getting stuck cases in it, started running perfect. And just at that moment where we're about to do a side-by-side mag dump, his Tavor jam.
Go!
Oh, the shit talking!
And I don't remember if it was steel case or brass, and it might have even been a mag issue. You know, it very well could have been a mag issue, but it was just the funniest thing. So, you know, my Tavor hasn't been perfectly reliable. I've seen Tavors jam in the field. They've always been easy to clear, and I think that that's something that they have a little bit of an advantage over the RDB on. So overall, though, I would say the RDB is, in my experience, been pretty reliable. Definitely on par with the Tavor for civilian style stuff. We didn't have any problems with dust getting into the RDB. I did take it down and clean it after that day to inspect it. Everything seems to be wearing pretty well, and that's something that's kind of nice to see. So when you're talking about reliability, it kind of brings you back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the video, which was, here's one rifle that has like a military track record, and here's another one that's just like a civilian rifle. Well, the cool thing about the Tavor, and I've got to give them credit, I've got to give Kel Tec credit for this, is they have a lifetime warranty. So when you think about it, if you buy a Kel Tec and you plan on running the hell out of it, and at this point in the game I'll share, I am planning on running the hell out of mine, it's going to be backed for life by Kel Tec. And in my experience, their warranty is actually pretty legit. Sometimes it may take longer than others to get back your weapon, but again, this isn't something we're buying for like life and death scenarios all the time. You know, we're not carrying it into combat. So if you're out doing a run and gun and it breaks down, you probably have another rifle with you. You run that, you send it back to Kel Tec, it gets fixed, or they send you spares or whatever it is. There's something to be said about that. You know, with a Tavor, they fixed mine right away, but I sent it in right after I bought it. So I really don't know what their warranty is. I would guess that they would, I would guess those guys would take care of you because they tend to seem like they stand behind their product. But with the Kel Tec, it's a formal thing, and that's kind of nice. And I think that it kind of starts to bridge the conversation from reliability over to kind of wrapping up, and that's value. And value is something that the guys in our crew are always looking at. None of us were born with a silver spoon in our mouth. None of us are independently wealthy. We pay for all of our guns ourselves. So when you're talking about something like this, you're looking at value, and that's initially what got me interested in the RDB. The fact that I could score it for $900 was very attractive to me, which is essentially half of what I paid for the Tavor. A little bit not quite as good when you take into consideration, I think I paid shipping and an FFL, which might have been $50 altogether. But that's when things start to get kind of interesting, and the conversation really starts to turn. Because when you're comparing the two, you're always looking at that price and what you get for the money. Now, if you can get the RDB, we're going to go with 900, even though I haven't seen any better deals than that really, or any time recently. I have seen it a little bit higher than that. The Tavor, I paid 18, the Beard paid over $2 grand, but you can get one for like $1,500 right now. So let's say street price $900 versus $1,500. Well, a $600 delta is pretty big. For $600, you can go out and buy 10 PMags, you can buy a case of Wolf Gold, and you can buy a quality red dot like a Holosun, and you can go out and have fun with an RDB. And that's pretty compelling. You know, I think that at the end of the day, the RDB represents a really good value. And I'm gonna leave it up. We'll wrap up the video with kind of hearing from the rest of the guys in the crew about what they thought about the value of the gun, and then we'll wrap things up from there.
Howdy, we're about wrapped up here at today's run and gun. I'm primarily an AR-15 guy. I've been shooting the A2 version in NRA CMP high power at Ben Avery and Camp Perry for, geez, 30 years now.
Dang.
And classified master in NRA, I'm distinguished in President's 100, and this is what I do most of my service rifle shooting with, is a gun that looks an awful lot like this. So I'm going to give it a few shots.
And if you've never seen an A2, here it is.
Yeah, you don't see many of these today.
No, everybody's got them all.
And then I'm going to compare it with the Tavor and the Kel Tec that I ran earlier today. So here goes, ears on.
Ears.
And I'm just going to give it about 4 or 5 shots from each gun.
Deal.
I guess I don't have a 0 on this one.
That's a hit. That's a hit. Looks like she was swinging a little left. Either
yeah,
that
I flipped
or
up that flip-up sight that I never use.
the peep sight.
Went back to the proper sight. So that was the A2. Now let's try the Tavor, which is of course built backwards. I'm not used to a bullpup. Balances quite a bit differently.
I'll say. She's a hitter.
Okay, so gun is
Clear.
unloaded. And now I'll try the Kel Tec.
You know what, Martine?
And all in all, I'd say that it feels to me like the Tavor is kicking a little bit harder than the A2 was.
A little different battery of arms, huh?
Why am I not seeing a dot on this one?
I turned it off. That thing is dead nuts on.
Well, that unloaded.
Yeah, talk about a fast
And it
mag
looks
release.
like the chamber is empty on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from my point of view, the Tavor feels a lot heavier and all the weight is right here.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like it's kicking harder. The Kel Tec actually feels a lot smoother. It's got more of a double stage trigger like I'm kind of used to for match triggers on service rifle.
Now keep in mind that Tavor does have a modified, it's got a Geisley lightning bow trigger blade in it, which has been adjusted down so it feels like a single stage.
Okay.
Which is completely explains that.
Okay.
The regular Tavor definitely has a lot more pull and take up and grittiness to the brake, so.
Yeah, so I'll have to try one of those someday.
Mm-hmm.
One issue I have with this Tavor that I commented on earlier is for my head shape and the way I hold it, maybe my arm length, it's way too, the optic is way too far back.
Yeah,
if I were setting one up, I'd put the optic out several inches further.
That's Pistol Pete's Tavor, and for some reason that primary arm's 2.5, I run it way far back, which is very unique for me. Usually I run my optics a little forward.
We complain
So-
about that too, Bill.
Yeah, a lot of my other shooters, when they shoot my stuff, if it's got magnification, they say, hey Pete, you got a funky eye relief set up on your scope, and it's true with the Tavor too, so I feel you on that.
So when I'm shooting NRA service rifle, I'm usually down prone with a sling, and I do all my work, my loading and so on, with sight adjustments with my right hand, and my left hand is always there.
Mm-hmm.
In this run and gun stuff, that gun's getting kind of long and awkward, and we can't use a sling because you're moving, whereas the two bullpups, I'm able to hold him this way and walk or run more naturally by holding the gun with one hand and then bring the gun up and shoot.
Yeah, explain what you told me before, Bill, about being able to have like a free left hand when you run.
As humans walk, our left hand will swing naturally. If you're holding the gun, it can't swing.
Mm-hmm.
So by being able to hold the entire weight of the gun in the lower arm like this,
Mm-hmm.
So the entire weight of the gun is held here. So as I'm walking more naturally.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. It's a very interesting observation that you're not going to find out shooting off a bench. If you had to pick one of the two, which one would you take? Just out of curiosity.
Kel Tec's more comfortable to shoot. I like the Tavor better because I think it's
More robust.
It's more robust and it's more classic. It's a real rifle.
El Scorpion. Huh? You ran both the Kel Tec RDB and the Tavor today. A couple Tavors. Which one would you choose and why?
None. It's not a CC, so no good.
Okay, no bueno.
Trigger wise, I gotta give it to the Kel Tec.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that because El Scorpion does prefer a two-stage trigger.
So trigger wise, way better for the ergos and all that stuff. It wasn't too different.
I have another question for you, okay? Kel Tec for $900, which is what I paid, or
that's what I was
Tavor for, I paid 18, but let's say Tavor for 16, Kel Tec for 19. Which one would you buy?
So that's where I have an issue because I like running steel with all my guns.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Kel Tec, we just run steel without the lacquer and it might run flawless.
Mm-hmm.
So if it does that, I'm gonna have to go with the Kel Tec. Would I spend the money on the Tavor? Probably not. But if that's kind of like something that I have to kind of weigh out, the Kel Tec is a pretty good option. Just
value
yeah,
ratio.
Value wise.
So let me get to the beard. Beard, now that you sprayed down and cool,
Now that I'm nice and cool.
talk to me about Kel Tec versus Tavor. Which one do you choose and why?
Kel Tec v Tavor.
Kel Tec RDB v Tavor.
I'm already bought in to the Tavor.
You already got a Tavor.
Have no plans on selling it or changing that or any of that. If I could pick up another Kel Tec for what you got it for, I'd add it to my collection. It's the only Kel Tec product I've ever run. I think it's a runner. It's fun to shoot. It's got a better trigger coming out of the gate. Kel Tec backs up their products, and
That's one thing I have to give it to them about. The quality compared to the Tavor, like quality of like the craftsmanship and stuff, there's a big gap there. Yeah. But they do have a lifetime warranty, which I haven't really been thinking about much.
The vortex of guns, I guess. And you know what? I've got enough in my stash that I don't care if I have to send it back for a couple weeks if they have to figure it out. So
if you're gaming with it, if you're just coming out here in the desert, running gunning, you can afford to send it back and shoot with it.
Yeah, whatever, man. First time bullpup buyer, I buy the Kel Tec.
Oh my God!
I'll tell you why. You're gonna have more money left over to go shooting, and at the end of the day, the whole point of this channel. Hear me out. The whole point of this channel, the whole point that we all get together and do this, is to help guys figure out what works and what doesn't work. Help guys figure out how to get out and shoot. And we always welcome you guys to contact us to come out shooting with us. We've got a guy here today that did that. So at the end of the day,
I'll roll in the Beard's cell phone number.
Call me in the middle of the night.
Address.
Knock on the door while the baby's sleeping.
And social security number.
But all games aside, why would you spend more money to have the same amount of fun when you can buy more ammo, you can buy more fuel to get out to the desert, you can buy more Powerade? Everything we do costs money. For the cost of that Kel Tec, you get the gun. For the cost of the Tavor, you can have the Kel Tec, you can have some ammo, you can have some magazines, you can do a couple mods on your truck.
You know what?
You can buy a Jew Pro off Amazon. You can come out here with your buddies. You can have a great time, or
you can
hit
the bar on the way
Tavor and sit around like most guys on the internet and talk about how you're going to shoot 1,000 yards with a .556 caliber gun that you never run, and you just get the one magazine that comes with it.
Now I see Alpha Cat nodding in the background. He still has his ears on, although we've shut down for probably about 20 minutes now. So I'm guessing that cool collar around his neck
It's a loud
is
wind.
keeping him cold.
Electronic, I can hear every word you
So Alpha Cat, now that you can hear my inner workings with those fancy earmuffs, question is, RDB versus Tavor, you shot them both today?
No, but I have shot the Tavor previously.
You have.
And I'm going to have to go against the grain here.
It's your opinion, Philip.
And it has nothing to do with the RDB itself, other than the fact that the brand has a track history of quality concerns.
Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
We just don't have enough time on this rifle to make a good decision today.
I think that that's a very fair statement and a very well thought out statement.
Now, as far as the actual RDB versus Tavor, of course, I'm going to automatically go RDB because I'm a left-handed shooter and I don't have to change a thing on the gun to shoot left-handed.
Yeah. I've
trained myself to shoot right-handed with Steyr AUG.
Yeah.
I've trained myself to shoot right-handed with the IWI Tavor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Tavor I was able to do left-handed also.
But okay, RDB versus Tavor, what are you thinking?
Well, I am kind of a fan of Kel Tec.
Now you have two Kel Tecs you brought with you today.
Yes, and I do have also the shotgun, the KSG.
You have the KSG.
Yeah. They are finicky at times, but I had the KSG for...
Dude, you have three of them. You're a Kel Tec fanboy.
Kel Tec fanboy.
How bad is it? How bad does it hurt for us all talking shit about Kel Tec all day?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
He's good. He's good.
Hey, everybody has their days, right?
Yeah, I
Every
appreciate
dog has
that.
his day. So we saw. Should I say that? We saw the Tavor have an issue.
We did.
But that was I think mag related maybe.
Could have been.
Yeah. So every dog has his day.
Mm-hmm.
Today the RFB had a problem with maybe bad ammo, like you mentioned already, maybe.
The RDB or the RF? Because you brought an RF.
Yeah, I have the RFB.
Okay.
We didn't shoot that today. Not enough ammo for that anyway.
Got it.
But I gotta say that I was impressed. I didn't get to shoot the Tavor.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. But
oh shit, man! I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, I was very impressed with the RFB.
Me too.
So I would go for the Kel Tec again.
Cool, man. Okay. Well, dude, thanks for coming out. We hope to get you out here again.
Thanks for the invite, man. Hell yeah.
If you made it this far, congratulations. You're obviously really serious about making the most informed decision and getting the most out of your money, whether you're considering either or both of these rifles. That being said, does the Kel Tec RDB dethrone the IWI Tavor? You know, unfortunately, I think Alpha Cat was right, and that it's too early to tell. And there's two reasons why. The first reason is just availability. You know, I think I mentioned it at least once in the video that, you know, that the Kel Tec just hasn't been on the market in terms of sheer volume at the price where I think it'll really move. And I think that's around that $900 price point that I was able to acquire mine for. I think that's kind of the sweet spot, and if the Kel Tec is coming into the market in numbers at that price, I think they're going to sell a lot of these bullpups. That being said, there's already a ton of IWI Tavors and X95s already out in the wild. People vote with their dollars, and if that's the case, the Tavor is the clear winner, but that might just be because of availability and, you know, market-driven kind of price. And that might change in a couple of years. So that's something we're going to have to come back to and look at and see if the Kel Tec can start playing catch up. I think the second thing is just track record, and it's another thing Alpha Cat mentioned. You know, we've got a ton of rounds through the RDB, but not enough to really evaluate its long-term reliability. Then again, with Kel Tec's lifetime warranty, it's a pretty low-risk option. So in that aspect, I think, you know, you really can't go wrong with either one of these. I think that the RDB does have potential to dethrone the IWI Tavor longer term, so we're going to have to come back and take a look at it. So that being said, Pistol Pete out.